Olivia Parker, 29, stared at the cream-colored envelope in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Inside was an invitation to her sister Amanda's wedding, to David, the man who had proposed to Olivia just 8 months earlier. They wanted her to be there, to watch them exchange vows. What they didn't expect was that she would stand up during that fateful "speak now or forever hold your peace" moment. Before I dive into the most devastating betrayal of my life, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if this family revenge drama already has you hooked, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling community. Trust me, what happened after I objected at my sister and ex-fiancé's wedding will make you believe in karma all over again. Now, let's rewind to where it all began. David Matthews walked into my life on a rainy Tuesday afternoon at the small publishing house where I worked as an editor. He had come to discuss the manuscript for his first novel, a romance, ironically, and from the moment he sat across from me with those intelligent hazel eyes and shy smile, I was captivated. "The rain makes everything feel more significant, doesn't it?" he'd said, shaking water droplets from his dark hair. "Like the universe is washing away everything unimportant." That was David, poetic, thoughtful, the kind of man who saw meaning in ordinary moments. Our first meeting stretched from the scheduled hour into 3, as we debated character motivations and plot structures, finishing each other's sentences in a way that made my colleague Jen raise her eyebrows knowingly when she passed by. "Just professional interest," I insisted later when she teased me, though the flutter in my chest told a different story. He asked for my number before leaving, to discuss editorial notes, he claimed, but the text that came that evening had nothing to do with his manuscript. "I think I forgot to ask you about dinner. Would tomorrow work?" Our relationship blossomed with the gentle inevitability of a well-crafted story. David was everything I'd ever wanted, intellectually stimulating, emotionally available, and somehow both ambitious and kind. Within 3 months, we were inseparable. By 6 months, he had a drawer at my apartment. At 8 months, we were discussing moving in together. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he told me one evening as we lay tangled on my couch, some forgotten movie playing in the background. "You understand me in ways I didn't think possible." I believed him. Every word, every touch, every promise felt authentic. My friends adored him. My parents welcomed him at holiday gatherings. Even my cat, Fitzgerald, normally suspicious of newcomers, would curl up in David's lap during our reading nights. The proposal came on our 1-year anniversary. He took me back to the publishing house after hours, he'd arranged it with my boss, and led me to the conference room where we'd first met. It had been transformed with strings of fairy lights and dozens of books open to romantic passages, each one highlighted with notes about how the words reminded him of us. In the center of the table was a first-edition copy of my favorite novel. When I opened it, I found the center hollowed out, holding a vintage emerald ring. "Olivia," he said, voice trembling slightly as he took my hands, "you're the editor of my life story now. Will you help me write the rest of our chapters together?" I said yes through tears of joy, and that night felt like the beginning of our happily ever after. We celebrated with champagne and dreams, planning a small literary-themed wedding for the following spring. What I didn't know was that 3 weeks after our engagement, my younger sister Amanda would return from her 2-year stint teaching English abroad, and everything in my carefully edited life would begin to unravel. Amanda had always been the family wild card, impulsive, vibrant, the kind who collected experiences rather than plans. We'd grown up close despite our different personalities, but had drifted apart during her travels. I was excited for her to meet David, convinced they'd get along wonderfully. After all, Amanda shared my love of literature, though she preferred edgy contemporary fiction to my classics. "He sounds perfect for you," she'd said during our video calls when I gushed about him. "I can't wait to meet the man who finally captured my bookworm sister's heart." The first time they met was at our parents' house for a welcome home dinner. I noticed nothing unusual, just the normal getting-to-know-you conversation, perhaps a few too many inside jokes about books I hadn't read, but nothing that triggered warning bells. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. How Amanda's laughter became more musical in his presence, how David's eyes lingered on her animated expressions, as she described her adventures abroad, how they both reached for the salt at the same time, and let their hands touch a moment too long. But I was blinded by happiness and trust. Why would I suspect the two people I loved most in the world would betray me in the most fundamental way? The unraveling happened slowly at first. David began mentioning Amanda in conversation, casual references to book recommendations she'd given him or funny stories she'd told. Then came the texting. I noticed it one evening when his phone kept lighting up as we watched TV. Just Amanda asking about some authors I mentioned, he explained with a shrug. She's looking for new reading material. I smiled, pleased they were getting along, completely missing the subtext being written between the lines. The changes were subtle at first, like the first few raindrops before a storm. David started having writing sessions that ran late into the evening. His manuscript needed urgent attention, he explained, and he found it easier to focus at coffee shops than at home. I supported him completely. This book was his dream, and I was determined to be the understanding partner he deserved. "You're amazing," he would say, kissing my forehead before heading out with his laptop bag. Most women would be demanding more time together. I took pride in not being most women, never suspecting that his words were seeds of manipulation, making me less likely to question his absences. Meanwhile, Amanda had settled back into life in the States with remarkable ease. She found an apartment just 20 minutes from mine and secured a position teaching creative writing at a local community college. We began reconnecting through weekly sister lunches and occasional shopping trips. During these outings, she'd ask about David with what I mistook for sisterly interest. "How's the book coming along?" she'd inquire. "He must be so talented. You're lucky to have found someone so creative." The first concrete clue came from my co-worker Jen, who mentioned seeing David and a woman who looked like me at a restaurant across town, on an evening he'd claimed to be meeting his editor. It probably was me, I laughed, though a tiny knot formed in my stomach. "We get mistaken for each other sometimes." "Maybe," Jen said doubtfully. "But I thought you were at that publishing conference in Chicago that night." I brushed it off, creating excuses in my mind. Perhaps Jen was mistaken about the date. Perhaps David had met another friend and hadn't mentioned it. Perhaps, I built a fortress of perhaps to protect myself from the truth. But the foundation was cracking. David's phone would go mysteriously silent when I entered the room. He began taking calls outside, claiming the reception was better. His affection, once so freely given, became measured and perfunctory. Our intimate moments grew fewer, with exhaustion or headaches becoming frequent excuses. "It's just stress about the book deadline," he assured me when I finally voiced my concerns. "Once I submit the final draft, everything will go back to normal." I wanted so desperately to believe him that I ignored the warning bells now clanging in my mind. Then came Amanda's sudden distance. Our sister lunches were repeatedly cancelled due to unexpected meetings, or student conferences. When we did meet, she seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently and steering conversations away from her personal life. "I'm just settling in," she explained when I asked if everything was okay. Adult life in America is more complicated than I remembered. The pieces were all there, but I couldn't, or wouldn't, assemble them into the betrayal they formed. The night I discovered the truth remains seared in my memory. It was a Friday evening, and David had claimed another writing session. I decided to surprise him with coffee and his favorite pastries from the bakery near our favorite cafe. I imagined the grateful smile on his face when I walked in, the proud look when he showed me his progress. The cafe was busy with the weekend crowd, but I didn't see David among the laptop-focused patrons. I checked the back corner where he usually sat, then the outdoor patio. Nothing. Confused, I called his phone, only to hear it ring unanswered. As I was leaving, doubt gnawing at my insides, I noticed a familiar car in the parking lot of the boutique hotel across the street, my sister's blue Prius with the distinctive dent on the passenger door. A coincidence, surely. But something pulled me toward the hotel, some instinct I couldn't ignore. The young man at the reception desk was sympathetic to my fabricated story about surprising my husband for our anniversary. When I described Amanda rather than myself and mentioned she'd be with a tall man with dark hair, his face lit with recognition. Oh yes, they checked in about 2 hours ago. Room 215. Would you like me to call up? No, I whispered, my world tilting sideways. I want it to be a surprise. I didn't go to room 215. I couldn't bear to see what I now knew was happening. Instead, I drove home in a fog of disbelief, the untouched coffee and pastries on my passenger seat like artifacts from another woman's life, the woman I had been just an hour earlier, blissfully ignorant of how completely I had been deceived. That night, I waited for David to return, rehearsing confrontations in my head that ranged from ice-cold dismissal to tearful pleading. But when he finally came home after midnight, smelling of unfamiliar cologne and wearing guilt like a second skin, I found I couldn't speak at all. You know, I said simply when he started his usual excuse about losing track of time. His face crumpled, not with shame but with relief. Olivia, I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. With my sister, I added, needing to hear him say it. He nodded, eyes downcast. We tried to fight it. But there's something between us that I can't explain. A connection I've never felt before, not even with. Don't you dare, I cut him off, my voice deadly quiet. Don't you dare say not even with you. The conversation that followed was surreal, David explaining how he and Amanda had accidentally fallen in love, how they'd been torturing themselves with guilt, how they hadn't wanted to hurt me but couldn't deny their feelings. We were going to tell you together, he insisted. This weekend. Amanda is devastated about how this happened. I'm sure she's absolutely heartbroken, I replied, sarcasm dripping from every word. Where is she now? Too cowardly to face me. She's at her place. She thought it would be better if I talked to you first. I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. How considerate of you both to choreograph your betrayal so thoughtfully. The weeks following my discovery were a blow of pain and disbelief. David moved out the next day, taking only his essential belongings in a hasty retreat. My engagement ring sat abandoned on the kitchen counter, he hadn't even asked for it back. I couldn't bear to look at it, yet couldn't bring myself to hide it away either, so it remained there like a monument to broken promises. Amanda attempted to call repeatedly, but I blocked her number. She sent emails with subject lines that evolved from "please let me explain" to "we need to talk" to finally "I'm sorry, but I love him." I deleted them all unread. Our parents were caught in the middle of the storm, unsure how to navigate this family catastrophe. She says it wasn't planned, my mother offered tentatively during one of her check-in calls. That they tried to ignore their feelings but couldn't. And you believe that? I asked, incredulous. I don't know what to believe, she sighed. I just know I have 2 daughters who are both hurting. One daughter who was betrayed, I corrected her, and one who did the betraying. They are not equivalent, Mom. My father was more directly supportive, showing up at my apartment with groceries and awkward hugs. This isn't right, he muttered as he stocked my refrigerator. Family doesn't do this to family. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into manuscripts with reckless intensity, staying late every evening to avoid my empty apartment. My boss, Ellen, noticed my sudden devotion to overtime, but didn't question it, simply squeezing my shoulder occasionally as she passed my desk. Jen became my unexpected rock, bringing me coffee each morning and listening without judgment when I needed to vent. You know what the worst part is? I told her one evening over emergency margaritas. I keep wondering if everything with David was a lie from the beginning, or if it became a lie along the way. Some questions don't have answers that help us, she replied wisely. Sometimes we have to move forward without understanding everything. I tried to take her advice, but moving forward seemed impossible when my past kept dragging me backward. Everywhere I went held memories. The cafe where David and I had our first date, the bookstore where we'd spent Sunday afternoons browsing, even the laundromat, where we'd playfully argued about the correct way to fold fitted sheets. The city had become a minefield of reminders, each one exploding into fresh pain when triggered. I considered moving away, starting fresh somewhere without history, but the stubborn part of me refused to be the one displaced by their betrayal. Just as I was establishing a tenuous new normal, the rumors started. Colleagues whispering about how Amanda and David had supposedly been meeting secretly for months before I discovered them. Friends admitting they'd seen the two of them together in situations that seemed suspicious in retrospect. Even our childhood neighbor, Mrs. Castillo, let slip during a chance encounter at the grocery store that she'd seen them embracing in Amanda's car outside our parents' house during the Christmas holidays. 3 months before I found out. Each new revelation was like reopening a wound just as it started to scab over. The timeline of their betrayal expanded backward, making me question more and more of my memories. Had they been laughing at me behind my back all along? Had their guilty glances been exchanged even as David planned his romantic proposal? I began to obsessively reconstruct the past year, examining every interaction for clues I had missed. I scrolled through old photos, noting how often Amanda and David had somehow ended up next to each other in group pictures. I reviewed text messages, finding suspicious gaps where David had been unresponsive, likely because he was with her. The most painful discovery came when I was boxing up David's remaining books to send to his new address. Tucked between the pages of his copy of Love in the Time of Cholera was a receipt from a jewelry store dated 2 months before I found them out, for a woman's bracelet I had never received. When I confronted David about it via text, his response was infuriatingly honest. It was for Amanda's birthday. I'm sorry. He had been buying my sister gifts while engaged to me. The level of deception was staggering. The final straw came 6 months after the split, just as I was beginning to feel like a person again instead of a walking wound. I was having dinner with my parents. Our relationship had remained intact despite the tension surrounding Amanda, when my mother casually mentioned that David and Amanda had moved in together. I thought you knew, she said, seeing my expression. They've taken that apartment in the Victorian house on Maple Street. The apartment they'd taken was one David and I had once toured and loved, but decided was slightly out of our price range. Now he was living there with my sister instead. I need to go, I said abruptly, throwing down my napkin and grabbing my purse. Olivia, please, my father began, but I was already heading for the door. I drove aimlessly that night, tears blurring the road ahead, eventually ending up at the waterfront park where David had first told me he loved me. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat on a bench overlooking the dark water, wondering how my life had unraveled so completely. A text from an unknown number buzzed on my phone. It's Amanda. Please don't block this number. There are things you need to know. Things about David you haven't figured out yet. For the first time, curiosity overcame my anger. What more could there possibly be that I didn't already know? What things? I replied. Her response came immediately, not over text. Meet me tomorrow at Carlton's Cafe at 2. Please, Olivia. It's important. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Whatever Amanda had to say, it was time I heard it. I was tired of being the last to know the truth about my own life. The following afternoon, I arrived at Carlton's cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a table near the back with a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a black coffee I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. Every chime of the door sent my heart racing, anticipation and dread battling for dominance in my chest. At precisely 2 p.m., Amanda walked in. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. She spotted me immediately and walked over with visible nervousness, as if approaching a wild animal that might attack or flee. "Thank you for coming," she said, slipping into the chair across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." "Just say what you need to say," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "First, I want you to know how sorry I am. What we did was unforgivable, and I didn't come for apologies," I interrupted. "You said there were things about David I needed to know." Amanda's eyes darted around the cafe before settling back on me. "This isn't easy to explain, but David isn't who you think he is. He isn't who either of us thought he was." "What does that mean?" She pulled out her phone, opened a photo gallery, and slid it across the table. "These are screenshots of conversations between David and 3 other women. All from the last 2 months. While he's been living with me." I stared at the screen, scrolling through message after message of romantic exchanges, explicit photos, and plans to meet. My stomach twisted into knots. "He's cheating on you," I said flatly. "Karma works fast." "Yes, but that's not all." Amanda leaned forward, lowering her voice. "When I confronted him, he admitted this wasn't new behavior. He was seeing 2 other women while engaged to you, before anything happened between him and me." The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. "And you expect me to believe that? That he was cheating on me before you came along, and you're just an innocent victim who fell for his lies?" "No," she said quietly. "I'm not innocent. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and nothing can change that. But I thought I was special to him. That what we had was different. Just like I thought what we had was different," I replied bitterly. "Exactly." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I didn't realize until too late that this is his pattern. He finds someone, makes them feel extraordinary, unique, then starts looking for his next conquest while maintaining the relationship. The excitement for him is in the pursuit and the deception, not in building something lasting." I sat back, processing her words. "So you came here to tell me that the man who left me for you is now cheating on you. What do you want from me, Amanda? Sympathy?" She shook her head. "I want to warn you. David called me this morning asking about you, how you're doing, if you're seeing anyone. I think he's planning to try to come back to you when things fall apart with us." The thought sent a chill through me. 6 months ago, I might have taken him back, so desperate was I to reclaim what I'd lost. Now, the very idea made me nauseous. "There's more," Amanda continued, pulling a small notebook from her purse. "After I found the messages, I started digging into his past. The novel he was supposedly writing. It doesn't exist, it never did. Those writing sessions were his cover for meeting other women." She pushed the notebook toward me. "These are names and contact information for his exes before you. I've spoken to 3 of them. The stories are all variations on the same theme: whirlwind romance, intense connection, then betrayal with someone close to them, a friend, a co-worker, a sister." Her voice broke on the last word. I stared at the notebook, unwilling to touch it. "Why are you telling me all this now? Why not 6 months ago when you first got together with him?" "Because I didn't know then. I believed what he told me, that you 2 had been growing apart, that he'd never felt with anyone what he felt with me. I wanted to believe it so badly that I ignored all the red flags." She wiped at her tears. By the time I started seeing the pattern, I was already in too deep, and too ashamed to come to you. A heavy silence fell between us. Outside the cafe windows, people walked by, oblivious to the wreckage of relationships being sifted through inside. There's one more thing, Amanda said finally. David and I are getting married. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? After everything you just told me. She gave a sad smile. It's complicated. I found out I'm pregnant. 2 months along. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My sister was carrying what could have been my child in another version of this story. He proposed when I told him about the baby, she continued. Said he wanted to do the right thing. I said yes because. I don't know, because I'm scared of doing this alone, I guess. But I know it's a mistake. I know he'll never be faithful. I struggled to find words, my emotions a tangled mess of anger, pity, and a strange, hollow relief that I had escaped a life with a man capable of such calculated deception. Why go through with it then? I finally asked. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Just a small courthouse ceremony. She hesitated, then met my eyes directly. I want you to be there. I laughed incredulously. You can't be serious. I am. Not as my sister or as support, but as a witness to who David really is. I've invited the other women too, the ones I could find. We are all going to be there, in the courthouse, when the judge asks if anyone objects. Understanding dawned slowly. You're setting him up. Amanda nodded. It's the only way I could think of to make him face what he's done, to all of us. And she placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. I want my child to know that their mother eventually did the right thing, even if it took me too long to get there. I sat back, stunned by the audacity of her plan. You're seriously going to let him think you're going through with this wedding, only to publicly humiliate him? Yes. And then I'm moving back to Japan to take a teaching position I've been offered. My students there loved me, and the school wants me back. It's a good place to make a fresh start with the baby. The sister I had grown up with was emerging from behind the woman who had betrayed me, the impulsive, dramatic Amanda, who always did things her own way. Why would I help you with this? I asked. After everything. Because it's not just about helping me, she replied. It's about justice for yourself too. And for every other woman he's manipulated. But mostly, her voice softened, because despite what I did, you're still my sister, and deep down, I'm hoping there's a path back to some kind of relationship between us. If not now, then someday. I stared at her for a long moment, conflicting emotions battling within me. The anger that had sustained me for months was still there, but alongside it grew something new, a sense of possibility, of reclaiming some power in a situation where I had felt utterly powerless. I'll think about it, I said finally. Amanda nodded, understanding this was the most she could hope for right now. She stood to leave, then hesitated. Whatever you decide, Olivia, I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you. Not because it didn't work out with David, but because I betrayed the trust between us. That's something I'll regret for the rest of my life. As I watched her walk away, I realized this wasn't just about David anymore. It was about sisters, betrayal, truth, and the complicated question of whether some broken things could ever be made whole again. Wow, what a turning point in our story. I can see from your expressions that many of you are feeling the same shock I felt sitting in that cafe. Before we continue to the wedding day, and what happened when I finally confronted David, I'd love to hear what you think about Amanda's revelation. Would you have agreed to her plan? Do you think some betrayals can ever be forgiven? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this family drama, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories like mine. I promise the justice that's coming in the next part is something you won't want to miss. For 3 days after meeting Amanda, I barely slept. Her revelations about David's true nature had shaken me to my core, forcing me to reevaluate not just my relationship with him, but my entire understanding of the past 2 years of my life. Had I been completely blind, or just selectively seeing what I wanted to see? I pulled out old journals, reading entries from when David and I first met, searching for any hint that I had sensed something off about him. There were occasional notes about his vague explanations for cancelled plans, or his reluctance to introduce me to certain friends, but I had dismissed these as minor quirks rather than red flags. "You're not alone in missing the signs," Jen assured me over lunch when I confided in her about Amanda's revelations. "People like David are experts at making you doubt your own instincts." "But my sister," I countered. "How did I miss that?" Jen shrugged. "Love and trust make us vulnerable. It's not a character flaw to believe in the people you care about." I spent hours pacing my apartment, debating whether to contact the women on Amanda's list. Finally, on the second night, I called the first name, Rebecca, a kindergarten teacher from David's hometown. "I never thought I'd hear from one of the others," she said after I awkwardly introduced myself. "He worked so hard to keep us all separate." Her story was disturbingly similar to mine: a whirlwind romance, a proposal, then David's sudden interest in her roommate. When I confronted them, they both made me feel crazy for suspecting anything. 2 weeks later, they were officially together, and I was painted as the jealous ex. One by one, I spoke with the women on the list. Each conversation was like looking into a funhouse mirror, similar enough to recognize my own experience, yet distorted in specific, unsettling ways. David had perfected his methodology over time, learning which buttons to push, which promises to make, how to gaslight when suspicions arose. The final name on the list was Meredith, who answered my call with immediate understanding. "You're another one of David's exes, aren't you? I can hear it in your voice." Unlike the others, Meredith had discovered David's pattern before he could move on to his next target. "I found his journal," she explained. "He actually kept notes on us, what worked to win us over, what made us insecure, how to play us against each other." When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He just smiled and said, "It was fun while it lasted." That phrase sent ice through my veins. David had said those exact words to me once, when I asked why he'd stopped playing the piano after being so passionate about it initially. "It was fun while it lasted," he'd shrugged, "but I got what I wanted from it." I had thought he meant he'd satisfied his curiosity about learning an instrument. Now I understood it was his philosophy for everything, relationships included. By the third day, I had made my decision. I called Amanda from a coffee shop, unable to have this conversation from the apartment where David and I had once built our life together. "I'll do it," I said when she answered. "I'll come to the wedding." Her exhale of relief was audible. "Thank you, Olivia. I know this isn't easy." "I'm not doing it for you," I clarified. "I'm doing it for myself, and for the other women, and for your baby. They deserve to know what kind of man their father really is." "Understood," she replied quietly. "I'll text you the details." The courthouse wedding was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, just 18 days away. According to Amanda, David had been pushing for a quick ceremony to make things official before the baby starts showing. He'd invited a small group of friends and family, completely unaware that Amanda had been assembling her own guest list of his betrayed exes. The following weeks were a blur of covert planning. Amanda created a group chat for all the women involved, 7 of us in total, spanning the last 6 years of David's life. We coordinated our arrivals, agreed on how to respond if David recognized us before the ceremony, and most importantly, decided who would speak up when the fateful question was asked. "I think it should be Olivia," Meredith suggested during one of our video calls. "She's the most recent before Amanda, and her objection will hit the hardest." The others agreed, And suddenly I was assigned the role of primary objector, the one who would stand up and set our plan in motion. The responsibility was daunting, but also strangely empowering. After months of feeling like a victim, I was taking control of the narrative. Meanwhile, I had my own preparations to make. I debated what to wear, something subdued and appropriate for a courthouse, or something bold that would make a statement. I settled on a sleek navy dress that projected confidence without seeking attention. This wasn't about making a fashion statement, it was about reclaiming my dignity. I also had to decide what to say. My first drafts were full of rage and accusations, but as the days passed, my approach evolved. This wasn't about humiliating David for my own satisfaction, it was about exposing the truth in a way that would make it impossible for him to manipulate anyone else. Keep it simple and direct, Rebecca advised. The power is in the facts, not in emotional outbursts. A week before the wedding, Amanda sent a message that nearly derailed everything. David was getting suspicious about the guest list. He asked why I invited some people he doesn't know, she wrote. I told him they were colleagues from the community college who've been supportive during my pregnancy. He seemed to accept it, but he's been checking my phone when he thinks I'm not looking. We instituted new security measures. Switching to a more secure messaging app, using code names, and having Amanda delete all communications immediately after reading them. The stakes felt suddenly higher, the possibility of discovery more real. What if he finds out and doesn't show up? I worried during a call with Meredith, who had emerged as a sort of coordinator for our group. Then we find another way, she assured me. But men like David thrive on appearances. He won't risk looking like the bad guy by cancelling his wedding to his pregnant fiancé. 3 days before the ceremony, I received a text from a number I had deleted but still knew by heart. David. Heard you might be coming to the wedding. Glad you're moving on. It would mean a lot to Amanda to have your support. The audacity was breathtaking. I showed the message to Jen, who let out a string of expletives that turned heads in the restaurant where we were having dinner. He's unbelievable, she fumed. He's still trying to manipulate you. I nodded, staring at the message. The old me would have responded with something placating, something that showed I was being the bigger person. And now, she asked. I deleted the message without replying. Now I save my words for when they'll have the most impact. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, rehearsing what I would say, imagining David's face when he realized what was happening. Would he show remorse? Anger? Would he try to charm his way out of it, as he had done so many times before? At 3 a.m., I received a message from Amanda. He's asleep. Everything is set for tomorrow. Are you ready? I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, the dark circles under my eyes, the tension in my jaw, but also the determined set of my shoulders that hadn't been there 6 months ago. Ready, I replied, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the statement was completely true. The county courthouse stood imposing against the clear blue sky, its limestone facade gleaming in the early afternoon sun. I arrived 45 minutes before the scheduled ceremony, as we had planned, and found Meredith waiting on the broad steps, elegant in a burgundy pantsuit that exuded confidence. The others are inside, she said quietly as I approached. We are stationed throughout the courtroom, just as we discussed. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Any sign of David? Not yet. Amanda texted that they are on their way. Apparently, he's in an unusually good mood. Meredith's smile was cold. Won't last long. We entered the courthouse together, passing through security and following the signs to courtroom 3 where civil ceremonies were performed. The room was smaller than I'd imagined, with just 6 short rows of benches facing a simple judge's bench. No elaborate altar, no decorated aisles, just a functional government space where life-changing vows were exchanged with bureaucratic efficiency. I recognized the other women immediately, though we'd only met through screens. Rebecca sat in the back row, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Aisha and Jasmine, who had discovered they were dating David simultaneously 2 years ago, sat together in the middle, drawing strength from each other. Sarah and Elena were positioned strategically near the front, where David would be sure to see them during the ceremony. We nodded to each other in silent acknowledgement, a sorority formed through shared betrayal. A few other guests, presumably friends of David or colleagues of Amanda's, sat scattered throughout the room, oblivious to the reckoning that was about to unfold. At precisely 2:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the scheduled start, the courtroom doors opened and David walked in, wearing a charcoal suit that I recognized. I had helped him pick it out for a literary award ceremony last year. He looked confident, handsome, completely untroubled by any moral qualms about marrying his ex-fiancée's sister. He didn't notice me at first, busy greeting a couple of his friends near the front. Then, as he turned to scan the room, his eyes landed on me. I watched the progression of emotions across his face: surprise, confusion, then a calculated pivot to what appeared to be warm pleasure. He actually started walking toward me, hand outstretched, as if we were old friends meeting at a cocktail party. "Olivia. You came. Amanda will be so." His voice died as he spotted Meredith standing beside me. His step faltered, eyes darting between us with growing alarm. "Meredith. What are you?" He stopped again, as he noticed Rebecca in the back row, then Aisha and Jasmine watching him with identical expressions of cold satisfaction. Understanding dawned on his face, followed quickly by calculation. I could almost see him running through scenarios, looking for an escape route, or a way to control the situation. Before he could speak again, the side door opened and the judge entered, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and practical shoes. "We are ready to begin if the bride has arrived," she announced. As if on cue, the main doors opened and Amanda appeared. She wore a simple cream-colored dress that skimmed over her still flat stomach, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Her face was composed, revealing nothing of the deception she was about to unleash. David turned toward her, relief evident in his posture. Whatever was happening, he clearly believed Amanda was still on his side. He had no idea she was the architect of his downfall. "Shall we proceed?" the judge asked, gesturing for David and Amanda to come forward. What followed was surreally normal, the standard civil ceremony script, the judge's practice delivery, Amanda and David standing side by side before her. I could see tension in my sister's shoulders, but her voice was steady as she responded to the preliminary questions. Then came the moment we'd been waiting for. "If anyone present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The traditional phrase, often omitted from modern ceremonies, had been specifically requested by Amanda. In the silence that followed, I rose to my feet, heart pounding but voice clear. "I object." All eyes turned to me. David's face darkened, but before he could speak, I continued. "I object because the groom was engaged to me, the bride's sister, just 8 months ago." Murmurs rippled through the small crowd. The judge's eyebrows rose, but she remained silent, allowing the scene to unfold. Then Meredith stood. "I also object. David Matthews was in a relationship with me 3 years ago, which he ended to pursue a relationship with my cousin." One by one, the other women rose, each stating her connection to David, each revealing a pattern of betrayal so consistent it couldn't be dismissed as coincidence or misunderstanding. With each testimony, David's face grew paler, his posture more rigid. When the last woman had spoken, Amanda turned to face him. "And I object to marrying a man who has been cheating on me throughout our relationship, including while I've been carrying his child." David finally found his voice. "This is ridiculous. Amanda, what are you doing? These are clearly just jealous exes who can't move on." 7 jealous exes with identical stories. Amanda countered. I don't think so. I've seen the messages, David. I've talked to the women. Your pattern is exposed. The judge, to her credit, maintained her composure through this unprecedented disruption. Mr. Matthews, these are serious allegations. While they don't legally prevent me from performing this ceremony, I must ask if you wish to proceed given the circumstances. David looked around the room, at the circle of women he had betrayed, at the curious eyes of the other guests, at Amanda's unwavering gaze. I expected anger, denials, even threats. Instead, incredibly, a smile spread across his face, not warm or apologetic, but amused, as if we'd all participated in an elaborate joke. Well played, ladies, he said with a small, mocking bow. Very dramatic. I'm impressed with the coordination. He turned to Amanda. Especially you. I didn't think you had it in you. His casual dismissal of our pain, his utter lack of remorse, confirmed everything we had come to understand about who David Matthews truly was. I assume this means the wedding is off, he continued, straightening his tie. Pity. We could have been good together, Amanda. Better than Olivia and I were, certainly. Amanda's composure finally cracked. You disgust me, she said, voice trembling. I'm going to raise this child to be everything you're not, honest, faithful, capable of real love. Good luck with that, he replied, then turned to address all of us. Ladies, it's been fun. But I think we are done here. With that, he walked down the aisle and out the door, abandoning his bride, his unborn child, and any pretense of being the man he had pretended to be. In the silence that followed his exit, I moved to Amanda's side, standing closer to my sister than I had in nearly a year. The judge quietly excused herself, leaving us to process what had just happened. Are you okay? I asked Amanda. She nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry it took me so long to see him for what he is. I'm sorry I betrayed you for someone who was never worth it. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a shared understanding that we had both been manipulated by a master of deception, and that moving forward would require a new kind of truth between us. As we left the courthouse, the seven of us who had come to expose David walked together into the bright afternoon, a strange solidarity binding us. We had each loved and lost the same man, or rather, the illusion of a man he had crafted for each of us. In revealing the truth, we had reclaimed something essential, our power, our dignity, our agency in our own stories. What now? Rebecca asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. Meredith smiled. Now we celebrate dodging 7 identical bullets. And somehow, despite everything, we found ourselves laughing together, as we walked away from David Matthews and toward whatever came next. 1 year after the courthouse confrontation, I sat across from Amanda at our parents' dining table, watching her bounce her 5-month-old daughter on her knee. Lily had David's dark hair, but Amanda's inquisitive eyes, and her innocent babbles filled the room with a joy that seemed impossible given the circumstances of her conception. She's getting so big, I said, offering a finger for Lily to grasp with her tiny hand. Growing too fast, Amanda agreed. The teachers at the school are completely in love with her. Best decision I ever made, going back to Japan. Amanda had returned to Tokyo 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't accepting the teaching position that had been offered to her. She'd given birth to Lily there, surrounded by supportive colleagues and students rather than the complicated history she'd left behind in the States. Our relationship had been rebuilt slowly, through weekly video calls that at first focused entirely on her pregnancy, but gradually expanded to include tentative steps toward reconciliation. How about you? She asked. Jen mentioned you're seeing someone new. I nodded, still cautious about sharing this part of my life with her. His name is Marcus. He's an architect. We are taking things very slowly. What I didn't say was how different this relationship felt, built on honest communication, and gradual trust rather than the whirlwind intensity David had specialized in. Marcus knew my history, understood my hesitation, and respected the boundaries I had established. There were no grand romantic gestures, no declarations of unprecedented connection, just two people learning each other carefully, deliberately. "I'm happy for you," Amanda said, and I could see she meant it. "You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you." Our parents entered from the kitchen, carrying coffee, and the pie Mom had baked to celebrate Amanda's visit. This was the first time we had all been together since before the betrayal, and though the atmosphere was still tender in places, it was healing too. "Have you heard anything about him?" Dad asked, never one to dance around difficult subjects. Amanda and I knew immediately who him was. I shook my head, but Amanda nodded. "Elena stays in touch with the others," she said, referring to one of the women from the courthouse. "Apparently David moved to Seattle and is working at a tech startup. He's engaged again." "Already?" Mom looked alarmed. "Should someone warn her?" Amanda smiled sadly. "Elena says they've tried. She won't listen. Thinks they are just jealous exes." "Just like we all did," I added quietly. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: Lily's developing personality, my recent promotion at the publishing house, Dad's new woodworking hobby. But later, as Amanda and I washed dishes side by side, we returned to the subject of David and the aftermath of our confrontation. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Not the relationship. I know you regret that, but the way we exposed him. Sometimes I wonder if we should have just let him go, moved on with our lives." Amanda considered this as she dried a wineglass. "No, I don't regret it. Not just because he deserved it, but because it was the first step in reclaiming our stories. Before that day, we were all just women he had discarded, isolated in our individual pain. Afterward, we became something else, witnesses to each other's experiences, validation that what happened wasn't our fault." I nodded, understanding what she meant. The seven of us had maintained a loose connection in the months following the courthouse, occasionally checking in with each other, celebrating small victories in our healing processes. Some, like Meredith and Rebecca, had even become close friends. "And what about us?" I asked, the question that had hovered between us for months. "Do you think we'll ever get back what we had?" Amanda looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep in her portable bassinet nearby. "No," she said honestly. "We can't go back to who we were before. But maybe we can build something different. Something with more truth in it." Her words resonated with what I had been learning in therapy, that sometimes healing doesn't mean restoring what was broken, but rather creating something new from the fragments, something that acknowledges the breaks rather than pretending they never happened. That evening, after Amanda had gone to bed, I found myself on the back porch of our parents' house, staring up at the same stars I had wished upon as a child, when the world seemed simpler, and the people I loved would never hurt me. I thought about the woman I had been 2 years ago, so certain of my future with David, so trusting and open. I didn't pity her exactly, but I recognized how much she had yet to learn about human complexity, about the capacity for deception in those we love most, and about her own resilience in the face of betrayal. The screen door creaked, and my father joined me on the porch swing. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, using the phrase that had prefaced our heart-to-heart since I was small. "I was just thinking about how different everything is now," I replied. "How different I am." He nodded, silent for a moment before speaking. "Your mother and I worried about you both so much. Amanda with her impulsiveness, you with your trust. We thought she would be the one to get hurt." "I think we both got hurt," I said. "Just in different ways, at different times." "Yes," he agreed. "But you've both found your way through it. That's what matters in the end, not that you avoid pain, but that you learn how to carry it without letting it define you." As I returned to my own apartment the next day, I reflected on how the story of David's betrayal, once the central narrative of my life, had gradually been relegated to a chapter rather than the whole book. It had shaped me, certainly, but it no longer contained me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Hope the family visit went well. Free for dinner tomorrow. I smiled, typing back a simple yes. Looking forward to it. The future stretched before me, unwritten and full of possibility. There would be other challenges, other heartbreaks perhaps, but also joy and connection and growth. The wedding that never happened had taught me that endings can sometimes be beginnings in disguise, and that even the deepest betrayals can lead to unexpected grace. As I unlocked my door, I thought of something Meredith had said during one of our post-courthouse conversations. The best revenge isn't exposing someone else's lies, it's living your own truth. And that, I realized, was exactly what I intended to do. Thank you all so much for staying with me until the end of this journey. It's been both healing and challenging to share my story with you. If you've ever experienced betrayal, or had to rebuild trust after it was broken, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Has karma or justice played a role in your own family dramas? What lessons have you learned from difficult relationships? Don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned, and share this with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals. I am grateful for this community and the support you've shown me throughout my storytelling journey. Remember, sometimes the most painful chapters of our lives lead us to write better stories than we ever imagined possible. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and choose wisely who you let into your heart.